I'd like to welcome you to the first official faculty-wide IdeaFest event. I'd like to start this afternoon by acknowledging that today's event is being held on traditional Coast and Strait Salish territory. The great, late British rock star David Bowie once said, "What I like to do is try to make a difference with the work I do." How we change the world in 5 minutes brings together faculty and staff from across our 7 schools and programs who share this sentiment. Over the next hour, you will hear 7 fast-moving presentations. Each will describe how research can have real-life impact, and dare we say it, even change our worlds, be it within one person, one community, nationally, or internationally. Our presentations, like our faculty, are varied, yet this group is tied together by their desire to transform lives and improve society. One speaker will talk about her book, which aims to help social workers understand how Métis children and families are affected by government care and systems. Another will talk about how technology is helping to improve our healthcare system and our well-being. A third will discuss his community-based research, which led to the provision of dental services for vulnerable populations, something that's lacking within our Canadian healthcare system. In the next hour, we aim to showcase the community-based, collaborative nature of our work at the Faculty of Human and Social Development and our involvement in the communities in which we live, study, and practice. Research is not a one-person job, even though today's presentations put the spotlight on some of our research rock stars. And, especially for the students in our audience, our intent is to showcase how research can make the world a better place, which is a pretty amazing outcome. And now, I'd like to welcome our facilitator, Dr. Michael Prince, to the stage. Michael is UVic's Lansdowne Professor on Social Policy. He's a UVic subject expert with a great understanding of Indigenous governance, as well as disability politics and related policy issues. Michael is also a Twitter superstar and a frequent media commentator on elections, government budgets, and public administration. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoy and are inspired by this event. Michael, over to you.
Thank you, Catherine, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone, and a special thank you to the students from Arbutus for coming today, and hope you enjoy the next hour or so. So thank you all for joining us here. You're about to experience a bit of history as we present the fastest and the most profound research poster presentation in the world to date. Some years ago, the American pop culture artist Andy Warhol said, "In the future, everyone will be world famous for 15 minutes. Well, today we've got less than an hour and we've got 7 researchers, so I regret to say they don't have 15 minutes. They have 5 minutes each to wow us with some of their work and their research. So let's get started. Before I introduce the first presenter, one key point: if you have a question as you hear the next 7 people speak to you this afternoon, put up your hand, and we have some people who I guess I'll call ushers. There'll be some assistants and staff members who will bring you a card. You can write out your question on that card, and the usher will bring it and deliver it to me here up at the front of the stage. And if we have time after the presentations are all done, we will address as many of the questions as we can. So on that note, let's begin our presentations. We've got 7 presenters. We're going to introduce them one at a time as they come up, and they're going to be speaking to you in alphabetical order by their last name. And so we shall begin with Dr. Janine Tansy, who's a professor with the School of Social Work in our faculty here at UVic. She is also the faculty lead for our Indigenous Student Support Center. And Janine will be talking to us about a new research project that she's initiating on how Métis children have a right to know their ancestral teachings. Janine.
Thank you. Tansy, soki esqueo, tawao. I said in my Cree Métis language, my traditional name is Strong Earth Woman, and I said hello and welcome to this afternoon's proceedings. I'm supposed to click here, so let's see if I can do that to begin with. Here we go. So my talk this afternoon is about some research that I've been doing around Métis children and the right to know their ancestral teachings. And I wanted to start by saying that I guess my example is an example of a dream, because as an academic for probably the last 25 years, I've always had a dream to do the ultimate piece of research, which to me was to give back to my community. And my community are the Métis peoples of this country. I am Cree, Assiniboine, and French, originally from the Red River area of Manitoba, and I've been here on Coast Salish territories for 11 years. And one of these days I'm going to retire, and so I thought I better get going with my dream, and my dream was to write this book and do the research to support it. This is the cover of our book. Unfortunately, the Métis sash didn't get into the slide, but there is a Métis sash in the corner. The book is called Calling Our Families Home, Métis People's Experiences with Child Welfare. And it's a book that is being developed to assist social workers who work with Métis children and families. We hope that other helping professionals will also gain some knowledge from the book. And really what I also hope is that we are centering the voices of Métis people in the book, and it is a first of its kind in Canada. In other words, there's never been a book on Métis child welfare in Canada, so we're very honored and proud to say that this will be the first. Métis people in Canada have been displaced through colonization, and generations of children do not know their mothers and their fathers or their ancestors, and many were raised without connections to their families or ties to their traditions. And most Canadians don't know about this gap. Most Canadians don't know about the Métis story. And so I'm here to tell you that it's been happening for generations, and that we're going to focus on that in the book as well. The forced removal of children through apprehension and adoption policies contributes to the displacement of Métis children, to family disruption, and also perpetuates dislocation and broken lives. There's little written about the Métis experiences, and there's a lot of data that has not been collected to date on the number of Métis children involved with our child welfare system. And that's largely because Métis children are not identified in the child welfare system. They are the hidden children of child welfare, as I call them. And we have very poor identification systems throughout Canada in the child welfare systems. There's never been a national study conducted on Métis children in government care, so ours will be the first. Here are a couple of Métis kids who have inspired me while working on this research. They are the children of my colleague who I'm writing the book with, Dr. Kathy Richardson, who teaches at the University of Montreal. So her children lent us their beautiful faces to put in as part of our book. The little research that does exist tells us a very troubling story. There is a piece of our collective knowledge that's missing, and that's said by one of our elders, Tom McCallum. Métis children continue to be identified as either Aboriginal or white, and have been moved beyond their birth communities and families. The objectives of our research is, first of all, to understand the impact of child welfare on our communities and our families, to document the experiences through various Métis scholars who will be part of the book, but also through Métis elders and practitioners who will be featured in the book as well. To understand the context of Métis selfhood, and I'm telling you, this is a very complicated topic in Canada. Who is Métis, who is not? What is Métis nationhood? These are questions that we ask ourselves because we've been disrupted through colonization. And so we hope to explore that as part of our book as well. And to analyze the policies that have been put upon us and develop new practices and policies and a sustainable network for Métis peoples. We hope at the end of the day that we can create a network of practitioners and people who can stay connected and keep supporting each other in this work. Our research questions will address 3 points. What is the scope of child welfare's involvement in the lives of Métis people? What are these communities' experiences with child welfare? How do legislative policy and practice standards share Métis families' experiences with child welfare? So we're hoping that people who are interested in our work will get in touch with us, and we really are looking forward to sharing Métis people's experiences with the child welfare system to improve the lives and retain our family connections. Thank you. Hi, hi, all my relations.
Thank you, Janine. Fascinating stuff. Our next presenter is Dr. Jeff Tassel. If I can ask Jeff to head towards the stage. Jeff is a colleague. He's the director and an associate professor in our Indigenous Governance program in the Faculty of Human and Social Development. And Jeff will be speaking to us today on everyday acts of insurgence and renewal that help regenerate Indigenous nations and their homelands. So welcome, Jeff. Thank you. Please welcome Jeff.
Sionigada. Honey, let me try that again. Sionigada. Ajijic Dagwadoa, Chijalagi, Ayetli, Agwena Sai. So it's an honor to be here today. And I wanted to talk to you today about ways that Indigenous peoples reconnect to their territories. Things we're doing on a day-to-day basis that make these relationships we have with our territories real and ongoing. And if you think of colonization as a way of depriving us of our everyday experiences, what are we doing as Indigenous peoples to regain and restore these land-based and these water-based relationships? How will your ancestors recognize you? That's kind of what drives me in my research. How will we be recognizable as Cherokee, Métis? When we think about our sense of nationhood and community, how are we recognizable? What are the things that we do on a day-to-day basis? What am I doing up here? Actually looking for crawdads, right? And this is a friend of mine, Woody Hansen, who is taking care of this territory. And this is the way that he nurtures and honors these relationships on his territory by taking crawdads, but also making sure that this place is safe for other Cherokees. Tohi, in Cherokee that means peace, living in a harmonious or healthy relationship. But more importantly, it means living according to the unhurried pace of nature, right? So this is my 9-year-old daughter here on our territory. I wanted to make sure that you knew where we're at, right? So we have corn tassel right there. So there's no question where you're at. How does she reconnect with her territory? And so this is where her birth cord is buried. So I'll drop her off right near here with some tobacco, and she'll have to go find her birth cord and pay honor to that birth cord. She's paying honor to that territory and making that reconnection. These are everyday things that we don't often see in a public way, but these are things that are going on behind the scenes for Indigenous nations and communities that make us, that revitalize us, that resurge us. This is a painting by American Meredith, and it shows one of the leaders of the stomp dance. And this is to show you that we have cultural continuity, but that doesn't always look the same. So she's wearing tin cans on her legs, but normally you'd have turtle shells. And it's to show that the essence of who we are as Cherokees may not be that same exact thing, but that dance, that ceremony continues on, and it continues on in sometimes unexpected ways. This is a Cherokee mound. You can see in the rise in the distance there. This is Gadua Mound. And this is where our fire was perpetually kept. People would come from all over to get the fire, the embers from this mound and bring it back to their clan town. When this place was overrun by the U.S. government in the 1770s, how did those relationships continue? Well, people started coming and bringing the fire, the ashes from their homes, from their fireplaces, and bringing dirt back from Gadua. That's how important this place was. So even though you don't see this on a wide-scale basis, the relationships still continue. And I'm happy to say that ceremonies are now being done back on Gadua. And you could see what looks like a telephone pole. That's actually our ball pole. So we play stickball games, trying to knock that fish off the top there. The process of engaging resurgence or reconnection with our communities, with our land, our cultures, is just as important as the outcome. That is, how we conduct ourselves as Shalagi, as Indigenous peoples, tells us a lot about how we're going to behave when we've achieved the outcome. And this is Shan Goshorn, a Cherokee basket maker. What do you think these baskets are made out of? Any sense? Traditionally, you might have thought of a split oak or maybe other kinds of things like honeysuckle. These are actually made out of watercolor splints, and she calls it a burden basket. Shan actually learned how to do a double weave basket, which is making a basket inside of a basket, right? She learned it from elders. She learned it from talking with other people. Only 20 Cherokees out of, we're talking over 300,000, know how to do this, right? She learned that process, and she engages with it, but she uses different materials. She uses watercolor splints. In this case, these are watercolor splints. 30 seconds left. All right, that was fast. With Indian Removal Treaty on it, right? So these are protest baskets. We need to reclaim, rename, reoccupy. That's part of the process. It means putting up signs and reclaiming our territories in ways that are often unexpected but are key to our survival. And we're still here, as all these slides show. And we're banding together to reclaim the landscape. In this case, Cheryl Bryce and others from Lekwungen territory are replanting camas and taking out invasive species. We're doing this together as a group, as a way of enforcing or imposing a community resurgence. And we're educating to perpetuate in the sense that, how will our entry onto this land be beneficial to the community and to the land, right? So we're asking different questions about how our actions here on this territory will impact future generations. And I close with Shan Goshorn's peace treaty. It shows that our relationships are still fragile, they're unfinished, and in a sense, they're left for us to put shape to. So, Wado, thank you. Wow, that was fast.
I just want to explain, most professors are programmed to be able to speak for about 45 minutes on a subject, and so asking people to stick to 5 minutes is a pretty big challenge, so I need to help them a bit. Our next speaker is Dr. Andre Kushtruk. He's the director of our School of what we call Health Information Science, and he will be presenting on how health informatics is improving our healthcare system and our own well-being. Andre, thank you. You're on.
Okay. So you all know that healthcare is getting modernized. Before, your doctors were using paper records. Now we're moving to things like electronic records that can be shared, digital imaging, and we're really moving ahead. So the area where I'm talking about deals with this. But let me just say what is health informatics, because I'm the director of the School of Health Informatics. It's a really good area, particularly if you're looking for something to do in university. Excellent careers, I have a plug at the end. It's the field, we call it the field that deals with information processing and communication in healthcare using technology. So it's really broad. It's about designing information for healthcare, not just for health professionals. We look at health professionals, patients, and citizens, as you'll see. It's also a nice example of something that's interdisciplinary. We're not an expert, or I'm not an expert in all these areas, but we work with every one of them. Biologists, doctors, nurses, allied health sciences, business people, and even my background was in psychology and computer science to solve some problems. So we all know the promise of technology. I mean, here's a nice example of a personal app that you have body sensors on you and it can tell you how much to exercise or how to eat. There's lots of examples of nice, nifty technology out there for healthcare. But the area I got into was about when it fails or when it's frustrating and the advent of usability issues. I predicted this would be a catastrophe in the hospitals, and they're all complaining about the computer systems in the US and Canada. So this is just a cartoon saying there's also economic and logistic issues. We feel it's cheaper to do surgery via Skype, so go home. Well, actually, in BC, there's some companies that sell sensors and that you can do remote telehealth, but there's issues. So what did I do? I worked on developing something called low-cost usability testing. Just quickly, usability is how easy is it to use a system, and we look at it how easy to learn, how effective is it, how efficient, enjoyable or not, and is it safe? So we develop methods where we can go into any hospital, record a person using the system, record the screens, and then fix it. And the other main part is here that there are many types of users of health technology, so it's more complicated than banking, aviation, or even nuclear power to please everybody. I got into this a long time ago. In 1995, I started going into hospitals and videotaping people using systems. And they thought I was crazy then. Now they're calling me in all the time to go in to see what's going wrong, how it's affecting the doctor when he interviews the patient. And those studies found that just the way you organize information on the screen changes how the questions go, changes diagnosis. Also after that, around the late 1990s, I was fortunate enough to work on the world's first project that let patients at home see their own records. This was at Columbia University in New York, and it was hard to get anyone to do this project. Now there's probably millions of people, 15 years later, that are able to see at least part of their records. We're a bit behind in BC, but it's coming. And then we also got into the same idea. We were looking at post-2000, how technologies like the electronic record here could be integrated with other technologies in the clinic, and we took videotapes of those using things called barcode scanning, how it integrates with electronic records. A lot of that was input to redesign. I'll just say since then we've got into looking at all kinds of different devices and things. We're doing a project called Healing Hub with iPad for helping the patients with cancer in their journey through the system. There's mobile blood pressure monitoring, and on the far right in the middle there is a shirt with different sensors on it called a smart shirt that can monitor your heart rate and other vitals. And we're also working with Google Glasses to see how we can do video recording with it in the hospitals. And not just another example, this goes into so many areas of healthcare. You've all heard of personalized medicine, where the medications and treatment are going to be customized to you and your genetic makeup. So what we're working on was how to develop usable interfaces for the researchers that do this work, and also, more importantly, how this information, which is very complex, gets presented to the scientists, the clinicians who are doctors or nurses, genetic counselors that people go to, and patients themselves. And despite the fact there's a lot of people working on the technology, we're one of the few groups in the world looking at how to do it from a human factors point of view so people can use the information. Thank you.
Wow. He upped the game there a bit, didn't he? And he left with 12 seconds left. Isn't that wonderful? That's the world of high tech, eh? Yeah, we can bank it too. Because we have co-presenters, our next speakers. Shauna Underwood is the Indigenous advisor of our Indigenous Student Support Center. And with her is the center's administrative assistant, Elena Sayers. They'll be sharing with us this afternoon how supporting Indigenous students impacts the person, the family, and the community. So, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Shauna Underwood. My Sinchotha name is Chanukuthanot. I'm from the Sayot First Nation and also a member of the Samish tribe in Washington.
Hi everybody, I'm Elena Sayers. I'm from the Hoopa, Jessa, and Copresenters First Nations, which is Port Alberni and Edmonton.
Our role is to support Indigenous students in the 7 schools of Faculty of Human and Social Development, Child and Youth Care, Health Information Science, Indigenous Governance, Nursing, Public Administration, Public Health, and Social Policy.
So our center is one of the only of its kind in Canada. We're a faculty-specific support center, so our research is kind of on the ground. We're learning as we go about how we can best support our students. We kind of look at ourselves as a neighboring community to the First Peoples House that provides supports to students generally across the entire campus. And a big part of the way that we see ourselves contributing is by creating linkages between community outside and inside the faculty.
And these are some photos from some of the events that we've hosted, different land-based events.
Sure. Actually, at the land-based event, Shauna and her husband gave fishing demonstrations, which was really awesome. So we're trying to get all of our HSD students out on the ground and working with the land in different ways. And we also have offered a colonial reality tour in which we take Indigenous and non-Indigenous students out on a bus and give them a different history of Victoria. And we talk about how the land has been colonized and the ongoing colonial relationships. What we're really trying to do is bring awareness to the Faculty of Human and Social Development as well as the larger Victoria community on how colonialism has impacted Indigenous students' education and lived experiences. And we offer a lot of different services here through Shauna, and another one that we do is weekly talking circles.
Right now I'm hosting talking circle for the nursing students and for the Indigenous governance students. It's just a safe place for the students to come and talk about anything that may have happened within the classroom. Sometimes it's just a cultural support, moral support. It's a group of students supporting each other, and it's always just a good idea for them to debrief at the end of the week and brings their different cohorts together to provide further friendships. Most students are living away from their home and community, so it's a place for them to build their own community within the faculty and provide support. And we also provide advocacy and cultural support. We provide different, we have soup days, and anything that's to connect the students to the different services on campus. If we can't help them at the center, we'll find the help that they need, or sometimes connecting them with different communities around Greater Victoria, especially if they're away from home and they want to attend some cultural events, we'll find somewhere for them to attend to.
Yeah, we do try and create different groups of communities within the center, and this is an event at the First People's House in which we work closely with them to connect HSD students, as we have some of the largest Indigenous cohorts in the faculty. So we really try and use their knowledge and resources within that school and the cohorts themselves. You know, for example, Indigenous governance and nursing, they have a lot that they can contribute to the larger faculty and university community. And one of our new things this year has been our soup days. We call it a community approach to soup, in which we're creating different soups based on where we're from. So Sean and I have done fish soups and seafood chowders, as well as deer soups, just to try and make people feel like home. And we also offer, you know, different cultural options such as smudging and things like that. So just different things that you might not be able to get to be able to help students feel more at home and get all the support that they need to be successful in their programs.
We also help students with their applications to any of the schools. If anyone has any questions regarding your application, we're happy to help you out with that before you submit it. And we look forward to seeing many more Indigenous students coming to our center. Ajijic.
So far, they win the prize. They came in at 4 minutes and 58 seconds. Now, Andre did promise pizza, but you know, that's a different. Our next speaker, Dr. Ziba Vagre, is the assistant professor with our School of Public Health and Social Policy. Ziba's presentation will focus on her research, which she's done for a number of years, supporting the rights of the child and how that impacts the well-being of everyone, everywhere around the world. Thank you.
Is it going to change? Who's going to change this? It's great to be here. My program of research takes a rights-based approach to children's health and development. The plan for the next 5 years is for me to build Global Child, a tool that facilitates for us to monitor how we're doing in fulfilling children's rights. John Milton says childhood shows the man as morning shows the day. Bill Gates says the first 5 years have much to do with the next 80 years. And the great Mahatma Gandhi says if we want to reach at real peace, we have to start with children. So be it the poet, the entrepreneur, and the humanitarian, everybody points at the significance of these years, the precious window of opportunity we have to set the tone of the rest of the life. Perhaps in recognition of significance of these years, in 1989, the global community got together and prepared Convention on the Rights of the Child. It's an international treaty that many countries, almost every country signed to it. The convention articulates 54 rights for children under categories of rights to protection, participation, provision of services, different services, health, education, social protection, etc., and of course, right to life and survival. Today, 195 countries, including Canada, have ratified this. Canada was not only one of the early ratifiers, but it was also instrumental in the development of this international treaty. By ratification, governments have two responsibilities. They have responsibility to implement it, meaning to bring child-friendly policies and high-quality programs to make sure every right is fulfilled for every child, and also responsibility to monitor. Every 5 years, they have to sit down and write about their efforts, their commitments in fulfilling these rights, and submit it to a Geneva-based committee called the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child. Then the committee reviews and advises how to move forward. Despite all the pioneering roles and good intentions, child rights has serious problems in Canada. Two sets of problems with compliance and problems with monitoring. These are just the tips of the icebergs of alarming statistics in Canada. African and Indian children are twice more represented in our foster care. First Nation males, 3 times more high school dropouts. Low-income families' children, 3 times more likely to arrive at school while they are not ready to read, to learn. Inequalities in health and development like this originates from differential service provision and implementation of policies. Our last tribunal process was a great testimony to that. We also have, and this really hits at the heart of Convention because Convention sits on the premise of non-discrimination. All rights applies to all children regardless of age, gender, ethnicity, etc. We also have problems with CRC monitoring. Because of our federation system, all the regions write a report and send to Ottawa, and Ottawa compiles and sends to Geneva. We have chronically been criticized that Canada's report looks like 13 different countries' report. Quebec talks about childcare, BC talks about healthcare, Northwest Territory talks about foster care. We want to know all these in all parts of Canada. My program of research, as a result of 10 years of work with United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child, has developed a blueprint of a child rights monitoring tool called Global Child, which will facilitate both implementation and monitoring of children's rights through an electronic platform. Global Child will take inventory of policies and programs in support of different rights, and then take a snapshot of children's health and development at different points of time, and will facilitate looking at these two sets of data alongside each other and understand associations. What works for children, what doesn't work. By doing this sort of comparison, Global Child will reveal gap in our capacity and facilitate evidence-based decision making. It will also create a baseline that will facilitate monitoring. We will know at what point we are and how are we moving ahead. Global Child also will harmonize Canadian report writing and will generate a unified report. If all the regions use the same tool, answer the same questions, upload the same data, then it will be the task of compiling this will not look like copy and cut and paste. It will be a unified report. Finally, because the children's affairs cross many sectors, Global Child will demand all sectors to come and bring their data, and this will facilitate coordination and communication. I leave you with the story of Model, a determined mother duck who was determined to succeed but failed. A mother duck who stepped out of house, all devotion and determination to carry children through the path, In her path, there were some good Samaritans who helped. There were services who cleared the passage. There were community resources to help her and her children to rise obstacles. But when it was thought it's safe, something else happened in another sector. A storm came, and a diligent and responsible city worker opened the storm drain. Mother Duck arrived at there without having capacity to maneuver around or have an alternative path, walked through, and so did children. And when they arrived at the other end, there were just few children left. It was only then the sectors joined hand to save the day, but we were lucky only if we saved few of the children who leaked through the system. If we could only have line of communication between these two. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Bruce Wallace, who's an assistant professor in our School of Social Work, the faculty. Bruce will be speaking to us on his work on how community-based research leads to dental services for vulnerable people in our country. Bruce.
Will it play? I took the time off. Oh, okay. All right, it takes some stress out, I guess. Okay, I'll start. I'm a social worker who does community-based research. I work with communities, and we do research together as a way to create change. And one of the keys to community-based research is that the community decides what to research. And that's what happened when a local anti-poverty group in town noticed an ongoing problem that people are ignoring and that maybe research could help to respond to. People are experiencing dental pain and living with ongoing infections in their mouth but unable to access treatment. Many people simply cannot afford to go to the dentist, and so they do not access preventive care, and they cannot get treatment when in need. And the impacts of living with untreated dental care is considerable. Imagine that you woke up this morning in pain, with dental pain. Imagine that you have that same pain right now while you're trying to listen to these presentations. Imagine trying to fall asleep tonight with that same pain and then starting all over again tomorrow. And that's the impacts that dental problems can have on quality of life, on ability to go to work or school or parent or to eat food and to sleep. Somebody should do something. As the first step of a community-based research program, we formed a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens. In our case, a research team that included people living in poverty, dental hygienists, a dentist who treated people on low incomes, social service agencies, and advocates. Together, we formed a research question and a research plan and carried it out and surveyed 150 people living on low incomes. It was action research. We used research so people would notice what was being identified as a problem that had been willing to ignore. We wanted to question what others took as acceptable. So we used our research as a way to ask questions. How could we omit dental care from universal health care in Canada? How could we support universal access to health care, but a dental care system that is based on the ability to pay rather than on needs? Just as we cannot remove the jaw from the body, how can we remove dental care from health care? And how can we have healthy communities without having access to health care for everyone? How can we accept to have a dental care system that works on the inverse care law, which means in Canada that the people with the least dental needs access the most treatment, and the people with the greatest needs get the least amount of care? And can private dentists and dental care be expected to meet these public health needs? Our community action research project brought people together, raised the issue, and was successful. Our work was instrumental in the development of a community dental clinic here in Victoria. And the Kool-Aid Dental Clinic, over the last 10 years or so, thousands of people have accessed dental care through this service. And then other communities in BC with the same problems were also looking at community dental clinics as a possible solution. And in the years that followed, there'd be at least one new dental clinic set up and operating somewhere else in BC, so that now there are over 20 clinics in this province. But this growth raised new questions. Were dental clinics the right response to these problems? Thousands of people were being helped, but the dental clinics were being promoted with no planning and no evaluations, and very little support from government. In fact, most clinics were run by volunteers, using donations, and most often limited to relief of pain. Extraction after extraction after extraction. Could we be doing harm with good intentions? And with clinics now operating throughout the province, were we providing a safety net or possibly a safety valve? In other words, could all of these good intentions from charities and volunteers be actually taking the pressure off of a system that needs to change? And while we're treating endless dental emergencies, are we ignoring the bigger problems that cause this pain? Community dental clinics are like food banks. A volunteer hygienist said this to me in one of my interviews, and I knew I needed a new way to identify these new concerns. So as a researcher, I took a new look at community dental clinics by adopting a health equity lens. I wanted a new way to question these responses. Compassion and charity are good, but should people with basic health needs, such as dental care, be dependent on volunteers and donated dental supplies for their care? And what I have learned is that health equity is more than getting access to health care and access to dental care. It's about ensuring that there are standards of care, which means that I should get the same level of care whether I am poor or whether I have money. It means there's a need for standards of care. What is basic dental care? Should people going to community dental clinic be able to expect more than extractions? Should free dentistry meet the level of care offered by other people when they go to the dentist, including preventive and restorative work? The lesson I learned and shared was the value of approaching social problems, like access to dental care, with more than good intentions. There's value in responding to social issues with theory and with knowledge, and community-based research is one way to engage people to create new knowledge, as well as create a dental clinic, and to work towards larger changes, like how we think about dental care in Canada. Fran Baum says that to bring about greater health equity, we need what she calls the nutcracker effect. Both top-down political commitment and bottom-up action from civil society groups. We need strategies for change that go beyond blaming individuals to creating health and equity promoting environments. And I see community-based research as one way to engage people and inform policy in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Our final speaker is Professor Jensen Yoon, who's a teaching professor with our School of Child and Youth Care in our faculty. She will be talking about changing the world by developing what she calls cultural acumen as a way towards reconciliation. Over we go.
And this is Kachakucha, so this is already pre-timed. 안녕하세요, 윤진산입니다. Hello, my name's Jensen Yoon, and you can remember my name like drinking gin in the sun, but not for you guys till you're 19. So my talk will introduce you to cultural acumen. It's a training towards reconciliation. But first, let me give you a little introduction to myself. I was made in South Korea, and I came to Canada when I was 5 years old. At that time, my family were the first Koreans who were allowed to come to Canada when the immigration laws changed to the point system in 1967. So as a racialized immigrant raised in a white suburb of Vancouver in the 70s, I was constantly asked, "Where are you from?" Which always kind of put my back up. You know, I had to think about the motivation behind the question. Was it friendly curiosity? Was it mean-spirited? Would I be told, "Go home, chink"? But where are you from has a very different meaning with Indigenous people. It is a starting point in establishing a relationship. It is important to acknowledge one's ancestry in order to know the relationship to each other, to the land, and to the planet, all in past, present, and future. I learned about the true history of Canada in second-year university. It was shocking and upsetting. I learned about residential schools, the 60s scoop, forced sterilization, the pass system, and the banning of cultural ceremonies. I was very ashamed to be a Canadian citizen. But when I was 20, I finally went back to Korea. What a culture shock that was. I finally looked like everyone, but didn't speak the language. I came from a country where I spoke the language, but was racialized nonetheless. Predictably, I had a massive identity crisis. But my identity crisis launched me to spend 4 years working and traveling around the world. I met all sorts of people, as you can see from here. My suburban worldview changed forever. I became very curious about humanity and wanted to learn more. So I came back to Canada and I went back to university to try to make sense of what I had experienced. I grew to understand that I was in a settler nation involved in a much larger colonial project. And all of us had been impacted by colonialism, but implicated differently. Over the years, I've coined the term cultural acumen as a way to frame my understanding of the world and our relations. It relies on truth-telling, starting with recognizing our own ancestral histories and the differential power, privilege, and oppression based on a lot of complex factors. And these factors intersect to create our unique identities. It's how we know ourselves and how we know each other through race, ethnicity, culture, age, class, sexuality, and so on. It's based on the social norms and the values of the culture we live in and the society which we participate. So cultural acumen training takes into account IQ, emotional and social quotient, as well as different skills, attitudes, worldviews, and knowledges. It's basically how we can become more open to learn about each other and not rely on stereotypes and pro-white and straight biases. So the legacy of colonialism has shaped how we perceive and treat each other. My work is focused primarily in training human service practitioners and educators to work in ways to decolonize and create cultural safety. With exposure to diversity and with education, openness, and courage, I'm confident we can do better. But nothing works without emotional resonance. So I believed I've mapped a way towards understanding how people can navigate through difficult emotions like denial, self-loathing, anger, guilt, shame. And without that, I think that settlers really won't understand the full impact. So without feeling these emotions, there's no way forward. The journey is a painful one. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission has unequivocally documented the deliberate abuse towards Indigenous people. There are no more excuses for settlers to deny the ugly truth of our nation. So I aspire to forge different relationships for the future. We need to have a deep respect for the relationship to the land and the interrelations of all living things. We can learn so much from Indigenous worldviews, and we need to value this knowledge more than ever. We have much to learn. We must accept this with great humility. So I haven't really changed the world, but teaching the School of Child and Youth Care is a way I can inspire students and who influence the next generation in the best way possible. As Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better. And I have hope for the youth that they'll do better for the world, and we'll be right there beside you. Kamsahamnida.
In closing, there you have it, everyone. I'm so glad we have such time-oriented people in this. 7 presentations from 7 faculty and staff who've changed the world. We'd like to get all the presenters back up on the stage because we'd want to, again, just to acknowledge you. It's just another day here at the Faculty of Human and Social Development at UVic. And I want to thank all of you for coming and joining us this afternoon. I also want to thank the university's audiovisual systems and to Shaw Communications, who are here today videotaping these proceedings. So please join me in thanking once again all 7 of our presentations on IdeaFest 2016.